Hello guys, good morning. Today is Wednesday, August 3rd. I'm gonna be recording today's session and trying to see if we can get anything good out of it. And we had a weird midnight or London or whatever you want to call it. Because what we've really had is yesterday was impulsing, right? Yes. And what price did in here is, well, not in here, but basically through Asia, which is somewhere around here, I believe. It was just retrace. Midnight was another, a continuation of the trend. London is a retracement. And now pre-New York has done something a bit interesting because in the 5, we can see how price basically swept this high and then immediately displaced lower. Now, I'm expecting a bearish week for multiple reasons. One of them will be the fact that what was it? We mitigated a weekly fair value gap, also a daily fair value gap, while taking previous week's high and sweeping liquidity, basically a lot of liquidity. And let me actually show you. It's gonna be better. Okay. Mitigation of weekly and daily fair value gaps on this point. Price goes higher, takes all of that liquidity, mitigates this daily fair value gap. Oh, actually, this was mitigated here, so July 21st. Well, that was actually quite a while ago. But basically, we took all of the liquidity above this highs, above all of these highs. I was taken by this high, which was yesterday's high, and then we saw aggression lower already on yesterday's price action, right? Which is this. You can see the immediate displacement after sweeping all of that liquidity, and then that's just respected, create more and more fair value gaps to the downside, and will generate opportunities for us to try and take advantage of. So me seeing this, I was going to say it's not a surprise, but it's not the word. But basically, it's actually really good because it's just a little bit of an extra confluence that what we are expecting is pretty likely to happen, right? To happen. And well, as you can see, that'll be the first fair value gap that we've had, mitigated, of course. And at the time, it will be causing a move lower, but didn't really generate any lower time frame fair value gap, so there's nothing that we could have actually taken advantage of on that price action. And yeah, so I'm recording this pretty early. We haven't even gotten into phase 1 just yet, into the New York kill zone just yet, so it's gonna take a while. We are what, 2 hours, well, an hour and 50 away from open, so that'll take a while. And just wanted to say this because we have clear sweep on liquidity, market shift, fair value gaps, along with the displacement, of course, and ideally we see this being mitigated. If that is mitigated and just falls from there, then it's fine, but I prefer seeing the extreme. On the other hand, today we have news at 11, which is 10 a.m. New York, because this is my time frame, not my time frame, my time zone. So that will complicate things around that time, but hopefully we can get into an intro a little bit earlier than that, which will be just ideal. And yeah, I mean, that's really pretty much it. What is it that we could target today? Well, I mean, keeping in mind that this is yesterday's low, I do believe that that will be a nice target, or just London's low will be good enough if we manage to get a good risk reward ratio around that. Well, a good risk reward ratio through session, right? Keep in mind that we haven't even gotten an entry just yet, so yeah. It's a bit hard for me to try and determine that. But London's low is always a really good target because it could be just liquidity sweep and then just continuation higher. So we don't really want to risk it through that. And bullishly, I just don't really see enough to be bullish. I guess a couple of lows being taken and then immediate aggression higher could give us a hint to try and buy, but honestly, the fact that I was expecting a bearish week, the fact that we had the yesterday's price action where we saw that 15-minute show an immediate displacement and that fair value gap is respected, and then the trend through the day just worked out entirely. And now seeing a sweep of liquidity, immediate displacement lower, just I don't know. I don't really have much confluences to buy, but I do have a lot of confluences to sell. And I guess we'll see what happens. At the time, we are really far from the open. I trade from the open and ahead, so we still have a good amount of time, right? A good amount of time. So yeah, that's pretty much it. We'll see what happens. Ideally, what I would like to see happen is just this range in here. Session, well, not session, phase 1 starts, trades against the trend, mitigates that, creates fair value gaps. Session opens, trades into that, lower time frame entries, and that's what we're looking for, right? Ideally, that'll be a really good scenario, right? On the other hand, just trying to find fair value gaps going lower that ideally have swept liquidity. If a displacement happened without really sweeping liquidity, well, I'm not gonna be as interested as I would be if it actually had taken liquidity, right? So for now, that's pretty much it. There's a lot of time ahead of us, a lot of time on this session, so that's really pretty much it at the time. Okay, I wanted to analyze this with you as we have some interesting stuff because price has on phase 1. So if this is a video that I actually end up posting, phase 1 is from 7 to 8:30. I consider I have sectioned it to basically try to have a way to think or to try and understand what could happen from certain moment to another certain moment, right? So I tend to say phase 1 from 7 to 8:30 because I've realized there are certain things that repeat themselves through 7 to 8:30. From 8:30 to 9:30, I consider that phase 2, where there are other things that also occur through that phase or through that amount of time. And then phase 3 will be just from 9:30 and ahead all the way up to 11 New York or 10 New York, depending. Okay, so phase 1 today went aggressively higher, right? Swept a lot of buy-side liquidity, which would have been this high, right? Well, actually, let's look at it from here. This high, and also this tiny bit of a high, which is this, was around the same level. So in my opinion, those are equal highs. As you can see, it takes that and immediately shows aggression lower, right? As an example, if I would have tried to trade here, would have we gotten any fair value gaps? Yeah, I think it was this one was one of them. Could have been a potential sell that I could have taken. That, of course, clearly would have ended up in a loss. But that's why we tend to wait for, not we, but I tend to wait for the 8:30 open. And from there, that's when I actually decide to actually look for opportunities based on everything that happened before that, right? So today, as you can see, price phase 1 went aggressively higher, taking liquidity, now aggressively lower, creating fair value gaps, showing displacement, which is really good because now, as an example, when phase 2 begins, what I can do easily is just say, okay, so if price trades inside this fair value gap, or maybe this one, if it's created like that, we could look for sells. Of course, 8:30 is, well, 37 minutes, 36 minutes away, so it is going to take a good amount of time. Yeah, it's just cool to have that, right? It's cool to have that because usually we tend to see the confluences or the indications of a potential trend being created or being shown before New York opens or before New York even gets here, right? So all that I'm trying to say is that this is a really good indication for me that they can be bearish quite easily. And on the other hand, it's just, I don't know what I was going to say. Honestly, just got distracted. So for now, all that I can do really is wait for 8:30 to open. Being fair, ICT has said, or well, on the first few videos, he says that we have to look for opportunities, or not we have to, but we can look for opportunities through the entire New York kill zone. It's just that from what I've backtested, I prefer doing it like this, waiting for 8:30 to come, and then look for the confluences to try and, well, find opportunities to sell or buy depending on, well, my weekly bias and my whatever my analysis tells me based on pre-New York, London, and midnight, right? Maybe even Asia, as it was today, right? I wanted to check the 1 hour to see if it mitigated anything inside that as well, and it didn't really. Let's check the 4 hour. Oh, it did mitigate a 4 hour, as you can see. Maybe you can't, but there's a fair value gap in here that price traded into, right? And it is causing that reaction, which it started at 5. This candle started at 5, finishes at 9. Yeah, still has another entire hour. And I'm saying that because it's important, because if it began at 5, we know that this is where it has already mitigated that. It creates liquidity inside the fair value gap of the 4 hour, then aggressively goes higher, takes all of that liquidity, aggressively goes lower. And on the 5 is where we are able to see this fair value gap. Also price mitigating that. What I'm gonna do, just for the sake of doing something, I'm gonna analyze what happens through this couple of fair value gaps, and if anything good comes out of it, I'll take the trade on paper trading, and of course I'm not gonna trade on a challenge. And yeah, I guess we'll see in a couple of minutes. That's all for now. Just wanted to see how this trade could work out. The entry was triggered a little bit lower than I wanted it to. But its price just basically mitigating the 5-minute fair value gap, aggression lower, displacement in 1 minute, generates a fair value gap. Pretty, not pretty, but somewhat of a high entry. Could have been a little, not high, low entry. Could have been a little bit higher, maybe taking this as liquidity, displacement, market shift, fair value gap. That might have been a better entry. But saw the displacement, decided to take it. We'll see how it turns out. Of course, just paper trading for now. Just waiting for the 8:30 open to trade on challenge, depending if it, of course, we have anything to trade from. Also wanted to mention that on the 15th, we do have a bullish fair value gap here that we could argue that was created after sweeping these somewhat of equal lows, right? Price mitigates that, but the 5-minute hasn't created a fair value gap for me to trade from, so it's really not much that I can actually use, at least not at the time. But yeah, just wanted to mention that the trade ended up failing quite quickly, not gonna lie. We'll see what happens now. I'm trying to determine, because I've seen this happening too many times already, where price just causes a reaction, but it just doesn't really work. It doesn't really do much. And I don't tend to trade trades like this on a funded funder challenge, whatever you want to call it. But at the same time, it's pretty much what we're looking for. We even have the super liquidity here. Maybe we could wait for the market shift. That's something that I'm still trying to get right, but really not much, honestly, that I've gotten. Yeah, I guess we'll see what happens. Just trying to see if we get anything important here. We are 10 minutes away approximately from open, so it'll take some time. Just wanted to show that, mention that, and I'll be coming back later on, I guess. Okay, so we've had the open. Prices at the time going lower slowly, not gonna lie. The open went higher, took a tiny bit of a high, which was around the execution of this entry, which I'll talk about in a second. And for now, still falling, kind of following the trend that we are expecting for the entire session. We'll see if we get anything clear to actually trade, because as an example, if price was to live this high for a bit and do something like this, and then took that, and then created displacement in the 5, and then a lower time frame entry with displacement, that'd be my ideal setup at the time, right? So this entry here was taken here on this candle, basically, when this fair value gap was being created. As you can see, at the time is working fine. Was based on this. Price takes this couple of highs. We have aggression, displacement, 1 minute fair value gap, execution, and well, it's going okay at the time. Actually put those a bit more. So fair value gap here on the 5, and that's pretty much it. That's why I took that entry, which was basically just following the continuation to this. So I mean, right now we do not have any kind of fair value gaps on the 5 to look for sells. Right, this will be the time, as we're already on session, it'll be the time where I'll look for fair value gaps in the 5, created potentially through phase 1, to then look for sells, as it is my theoretical trend. But that hasn't happened. I mean, the only fair value gap that was left was this one and was mitigated already. And at the time, again, it's kind of causing that continuation, but not with much intent as I would like. If price did this and then the 1 minute show displacement, I could try and take that, although I do believe it's a little bit of a risky entry. But it'd be a tiny swip on liquidity, so it could be fine. And that is really all that I can do for now. That's the only thing that I can wait for if it were to happen. On the other hand, I'm just going to wait for 5 minutes to create displacement, fair value gap, trying to enter in the lower time frame, see if the same fair value gap is created in lower time frame, of course. But that's pretty much it. Just wanted to mention that. And we're going to have a little bit of a long wait, I believe, for us to find an entry. Okay, we had the tiny bit of a run in liquidity above this highs, which is good, I guess, on the buy side liquidity. And after that, we didn't get the fair value gap until this, which is fine, most of it. I would have liked to see it on the first few candles, which would have been here, but that didn't happen, and that's fine. And we could be taking this. Question is, do we want to take it or not? Because I'm thinking of taking it on the challenge, and actually haven't opened the MetaTrader yet, which is great. But yeah, that is a very good question. Do I really want to take this or not? 1937. I know you can't see anything. Just give me a second. Now pending and target. We'll talk about it later. Okay, there it is. Didn't take the entry because well, didn't really get it there in time. Had to open the MetaTrader, but the stop loss and everything just took too much time. We'll see. It could work out well. I did want to take it, but yeah, just didn't get there in time. If it trades back into it, I could take it if it traded back into it. Otherwise, I'll just need to wait for a 5 minute fair value gap and then look for that the lower time frame entry in there. Yeah, that's pretty much it, honestly. If it trades back into it, do I want to take it? Yeah, I'll take it. If it gets back into it, could place a limit. Nah. Stop loss was gonna be 37 if I checked correctly. 2 ticks above, that's fine. Target wise, likely we will stay slow, or actually London slow. Yeah, that's fine. 5R, that's fine. We'll give it a minute or two to see if it actually comes back. Otherwise, I'm not gonna be interested in looking for that return into the fair value gap. The 2 minute did have a better fair value gap in my opinion, but well, it is what it is. Nothing we could do about it. I thought I had my MetaTrader open, I'm not gonna lie. Okay. What will be target? 1540. Okay. Just waiting and see if it actually trades back into that. About to have a 2 minute fair value gap above this candle's high, right? Could trade that as well. Just prefer to see it coming back up into the fair value gap. I'll give it a tiny bit more, nothing much more than that. Now I'm no longer interested in this. We'll see how things turn out, but sadly I didn't manage to get into that entry, which sucks, but it's fine. We'll see if it plays out as well as I wanted to play out. We have to pay attention to see what happens when it breaks all of these lows, because we do have like a lot of mitigations in and around this area. So this could bounce off a lot, right? And then finally break that. That could count as a sell side liquidity run, which could cause price to go higher, maybe sweep some liquidity and then continue lower, if we are looking for that bearishness, that bearish continuation. Otherwise, it could just drop, retracement, and then just continue lower. Either way, I do expect somewhat of a aggressive run below these lows, right, to take all of that liquidity once and for all. And after that, we just gotta wait and see what happens, honestly. That's pretty much it for now. So we finally had the impulse so we were kind of expecting due to all of the liquidity being built up below the lows, right? As I mentioned through one of the most recent analysis on this video was that we were stalling a lot in these levels, right, which is price just mitigating over and over the level, just causing more and more liquidity to be built up around those levels. And price has now even one more time reacted to it, right? So you see here, that's the line, what I'd call the bare minimum per se. And then you see even another reaction, you know, not much intent at first from price action, then it finally breaks it entirely, because as you can see here, it goes below the low, right, quite aggressively, which is again something that I did mention, that it tends to do that when it's building a lot of liquidity. At some point it will just aggressively go below those lows and then just completely take all of that liquidity that was basically building up, right? So I wanted to say that, and to say that, well, now we had another 5-minute fair value gap, or well, the first on phase 2, which I am interested in trading, but price has to get back into it, which will take some time for sure. And I mean, I'm going for London slow. We'll see if it actually reaches that. London slow, potential as a sell. And at the same time, we could have gone for something a little bit higher, such as, well, probably a fair value gap in here. What is it that we have? Mitigated fair value gap down there, mitigated as well. The 15 has a fair value gap here. This is something that we could have aimed, because it is on below the 50% of the entire move, right? And an unmitigated fair value gap that, of course, as you can see, has a lot of liquidity above it, which is what we were just discussing. And it's going quite well. Well, there's nothing that I can do about that entry. It really sucks. Could have been a really good trade, at least so far. And the target would have been still this low, so 4.93R, close to 5R. And we'll see if it finally gets there or not. I'm gonna be paying attention to see if it gets back up into this one. But at the time, there's really not that much that I can do about it, sadly. Was that alert created? No. Why not? Okay, there it is. Yeah, really good impulse. 15-minute might create a fair value gap as well, which will be cool, because just a little bit of an extra confluence. But at the time, we're having the impulse that we were expecting for the session, and very happy about that. We'll see if we can take advantage of it later through a fair value gap in the 5-minute. For now, that's all that I wanted to say, and I'll be coming back in a little bit. As you can see, price has As you can see, price has actually mitigated a 50-minute fair value gap created a few minutes ago, good few minutes ago, and has caused a pretty aggressive move, which could turn into an entry, right? The problem is the stop loss has to be all the way up to the wick, right? So all the way up here, which is a little bit complicated, because we have pretty much the same problem with the previous entries, with the previous entry, which is basically a large stop loss. I would have taken the one above, no worries, but this one is a bit more complicated due to the stop loss and the fact that we are much closer, basically halfway to what we considered our target, right? It could go further than that, but that's what I would like to target. So I think I'm gonna be avoiding this. Because it just doesn't make enough sense for me to risk the capital in it. I will take another of this. Just to take it, honestly. I would take this entry on my challenge if it was on... if we had a better target, or basically a target further away, or of course a better stop loss, right? Either way, it would have been a little bit better to have a higher risk to reward ratio, basically, which is what I was kind of looking for. And in this case, we're not really getting it, at least not just yet, and I guess we'll see. I'm gonna put an alert on this one, and then we have the alert on the stop loss. Sorry, on the take profit. We'll see if it works out or not. I could be a little bit aggressive and say if it gets up to this tip, I sell it because it's a better stop loss. We're talking about 5.5 against 6.7. That'll be better. Still, due to the target being closed, it is not. It's 3R. I mean, could be considered good enough, but it's already a little bit too late, and I wouldn't really like price going back up to that. If we generate another fair value gap in 1 minute, I could be aggressive and take that, but I prefer taking the first fair value gap created after mitigating a higher time for fair value gap, such as 5 or 15. So it would have been this one. And if it, as an example, if we were to create another one here, which the stop loss will be above this high, I wouldn't really be interested on it, because what tends to happen, or what not tends to, but easily happens every now and then, if this creates a fair value gap, something like this could occur, right? So this fails, but the high is still being respected. So presumably our stop loss, taking an entry on this, should be all the way up here, right? Which means double the stop loss for pretty much a considerably worse entry, due to the fact that we're selling lower and have a potentially, even not potentially, actually a worse risk to reward ratio, which is not what we look for, right? So for now, trade is working quite well. If as an example, the 5 was to take this high, right, takes the high, displacement and a lower time frame entry occurs here, then I'm likely to take that, because it will be cool. But of course, it has to happen before around 10:30 New York, which I find it well, unlikely. Not gonna lie, I find it unlikely. So that's all that I want to say on this update. This entry is working quite well. This would have been working lovely. I mean, currently running at what, 3R approximately, and probably would have taken some partials away from it, not gonna lie. I just wanted to mention that. I'll be coming back potentially already with the results of this two trades running. Since I didn't mention it on the previous update, this is the fair value gap that I was mentioning. Could have worked out, or it could have been taken, which would have had, of course, a better stop loss. We're talking about 4.7, so literally 1 pip less, and 3R. I don't tend to trade anything below 4R, so this would have been a no trade for me. And again, it has to put the possibility to go in above this high, take some liquidity, and then just continue lower. So not ideal to take. Just wanted to add that to the previous update. So as you can see, price did end up going higher, taking this high, the high that where our stop loss would have been, unless we would have kept the stop loss all the way up there, which, as I mentioned, would have been a little bit of a dumb idea. I mean, safe idea, right? But dumb due to the risk to reward ratio. Would have been just fine, better said, would have been just better to just take this one. Now, went higher, took a little bit of a high, still respecting this high, mitigating higher time for fair value gap, generates another lower time for fair value gap, which means that this is another thing that we could actually be taking. I was thinking of taking this on the challenge, but not gonna lie, I just don't like that the fair value gap is very tiny. We're basically just ranging in this somewhat of price action, getting really close to the news, so even something that I can't even trade due to the news mostly. So I'm gonna be ignoring this, but it will be a good opportunity to take advantage of. Again, due to the news, I can't take it, and I don't really believe I would have anyways, due to the fact that it's a tiny fair value gap. And well, the fact that my stop loss should have been all the way up here, right? Just to be safe, because this high could be taken as well. Now, if this high is taken, news pass, and then another fair value gap is created, I might take that one just for the liquidity being taken, being fully honest. Yeah, I guess we'll see what happens with this. News in 5 minutes 30. And yeah, nothing else to add. I might close partials when these lows are broken, because they're pretty much equal lows. So half of it at least, and then just allow the rest to run to this, which actually I do not have my take profit set to. A high percent apparently. Okay, so that's pretty much what I wanted to say. Okay, so worked out lovely. Right, let's actually do it. We could do it now. We'll do it here. Questions and the labels. Okay. This is the loss we took. This is the sell we took. This is the other sell we took on this, right? Fair value gap. And then I took some partials with the news because, as you can see, this candle is the news, which was the 3 million, I think. Yeah, 3 million something. And then the rest, 700,000 was closed here, leaving that account. That's starting 205,000. 5,000 will be at 2.5%, isn't it? Yes, 1% is 2. Yeah, 2.5%, I think. Yeah. Lovely trades, not gonna lie. Honestly, all that we really did was just follow the trend. We had that, I mean, I did do the explanations on why I was looking for sales today and where to look at it, where to look for them, right? And this sell was pretty much the most clean that we could have gotten into, right? Because it is this fair value gap, right? The fair value gap that we based the entry on was the fair value gap created right after we swept all of that liquidity that we had to the left that we discussed earlier. This is the fair value gap, and price traded into that. We had the first sell, ended up failing. Second sell works out lovely, right? We had, well, that was pretty much the entry that actually worked out the best. And then through session, we have session opened here. Created pretty much equal highs, although it does sweep the high by a tiny bit, so you can see. Actually, just go on the 1 minute. It does barely sweep the high, as you can see. And then goes lower, no fair value gap, goes higher, swaps liquidity, immediate displacement. I don't tend to look for run-on stops in the 1 minute, but in this case, we had this. This entire price action happened inside a 5-minute fair value gap after, again, a sweep on liquidity, or a run-on stops, however you want to call it. Aggression lower, first entry, then you see the run-on liquidity again, displacement. This is a lovely entry that I wanted to take on the challenge. Sadly, didn't do it, and starts going down. 15-minute fair value gap created on, this is still phase 2. Phase 3 is where the mitigation occurs, but still phase 2. 15-minute fair value gap, price trades into that. We have a fair value gap. This would have been the entry. This, honestly, I didn't want to trade it due to the stop loss being too large and the fact that it would have gotten just 3 hour, if I remember correctly. As you can see, it is going lower, but my target was there, so I can't really go further than that. And after that, we get this, which would have been a lovely entry, tighter stop loss, but again, aggressive and pretty close to the news. I don't like trading through news because the stop losses can be skipped, and I'm not really looking forward to lose my account like that, right? So lovely day. Could have been better if I would have taken the executions on challenge account, but that's fine by me, honestly. Really lovely day, good analysis, good trades. Just 1 loss, 2 wins, right? Overall in profits. This is 4.93R, this is 4.43R, but I actually took this one. I think this one was 3R. Not sure where the execution happened. So here approximately stop loss, don't remember where it was, but this is barely a 2R at a 0.5%. That's just an extra 1% of this trade. So just wanted to say that I'm gonna be adding to this the day resume at the end, so you'll see that, and then a little bit of a further explanation. So yeah, that's pretty much from this. Hope you enjoyed this live session, and I'll be seeing you right now. Okay, so let's just jump straight into the resume of, well, today's resume basically. Wednesday 3rd, approximately 6%. We can delete all of this. Yes. Although I could keep the lines. Yeah, let's actually do that so we don't have to worry about that. Actually, all of this can be kept. I think, and that's, yes. Good. As you can see, price actually did pull away a lot more than potentially expected. Could have been this low as a target. Could have been, well, this one didn't actually get to it. Yeah, doesn't really matter. Okay. So we'll do it from the 5 as usually, and we'll write important stuff. Actually, let's take this a notch back. Asia. I want to mention that Asia did the thing that I mentioned earlier. This is basically what I was trying to explain earlier in the morning. So we'll add it to base price action. But of course we need to do the rest. Okay. So let's do it with replay for it to look a bit better. And this is yesterday's low, which could have been considered a target. This is London's low, which also could have been considered a target. This is what we chose as a target. I think it was, yeah, it was. Okay, so what did midnight do? Midnight basically followed the trend, didn't it? Because this run is run by this run. So this liquidity up here was taken by this move higher that then ends up acting as liquidity for phase one to take, right? So yeah, I should have actually zoomed in a bit more and not as little as I did, because now it's a bit of a problem, but we'll keep it like that, sadly. I'm gonna need a second. Okay, let's keep on going. After that, what is it? Not much, right? Yeah, not much. I love how at the end of the session, you can clearly see what happened, right? I mean, phase one just went against the trend and swept liquidity, round and buy side liquidity, immediate displacement, 5-minute fair value gap, price trace into that, a little bit of a range, aggression, a little bit of a consolidation, aggression, right? Oops. Right, I mean, even just taking the 5-minute entry, which would have been on this high, would have been fine. But of course, in that case, target would have been complicated because this low would have been 2R. This low back here would have been 2.4. And the peak at it, approximately 3.75. Reason why it's not taking 5-minute entries, because it just sucks a bit, honestly. It just sucks. Okay, so that's pretty much what I want to mention on the screenshot, and the rest I'll just explain it in here. Actually, we don't need that because it's analyzed there, and we need session because it is the most important thing. Not the most important, but partially the most important. Okay, I'm not gonna show the entire impulse. We already see it. We already seen it, and even on another screenshot. So this is what we'll do. We'll just point out the important things that we need to point out, right? What was this? Didn't we have a 15-minute fair value gap here? I think we did. There is a 5 in there. I'm just gonna call this the 15. Doesn't really matter if we're not precise on this, because in the time we have to be precise, not now necessarily. So I'm gonna call that the fair value gap on the 15, where we did find another fair value gap in the lower time frames to trade. Let's actually use it like this. Where's the open? A30 is here. Can we do it the other way around? Yeah, okay. And now I want to do this. This is phase one. Put it to the left, and we'll be fine. Okay, so what I want to explain here is that the simple manner to explain it is run against trend, run on BSL, immediate 5-minute displacement, mitigation of 5-minute fair value gap. That's literally all that happened, or not all that happened, but basically what we need to understand. Because when I said, as I said earlier, when I was explaining what was phase one for me, this is exactly what I did when I realized that, as an example, phase one, or basically at that time, was from 7 to 8:30. We tend to see a move either against the trend, or we see a run on liquidity, change in direction, the creation of fair value gaps that then phase two from 8:30 to 9:30 tends to trade into, right? This is exactly how I personally realized that, as an example, from certain times or from certain hours in a time frame, not a time frame, in between certain hours, right, certain times of the day, certain things tend to happen, such as this: a run against a trend, a run on buy side liquidity through what I call phase one, tends to occur. And when that happens, it tends to create a direction for me to follow through the entire session, right? So for me, mentioning just the fact that there was a run against the trend, a run on buy side liquidity, immediate 5-minute displacement, it tells me that what I've back tested not back in the day, but basically a month or so ago, when I was back testing or trying to learn how to apply ICT's concepts, that's when I realized that this repeats itself over and over, and the fact that I can see it over and over still happening is really cool, right? So just wanted to mention that. 8:30, let's call it like this. Session started slowly. Let's call it cold to call it somehow. I think that's all that I want from this for now. So phase one, I'm just gonna copy this. Phase two, what are we going to say happened through phase two? Not what are we going to say, what actually happened. So and I mentioned this as well here on phase two, sorry, because it's something that I've seen as well, right? So as an example, if you wanted to know what will be an ideal scenario for me, let's suppose we have, this is London's high, this is phase one, and this is phase two. Let's suppose that we have, that's London high, we have something like this, and then phase one goes against the trend, strips liquidity, blah, blah, blah. Session starts here, goes a bit lower, higher. So we had a run on buy side liquidity. Let's actually do it like this. We had a run on buy side liquidity through phase one. Then session begins, trades a bit lower, trades a bit higher, strips liquidity, displacement. And then we have fair value gap in the 5 that we can look for lower time frame entries, right? Something like that. So I have a potential trend based on the fact that phase one swept liquidity and went against the trend. And phase two did exactly the same thing. When it opened, it traded a bit again. It traded a bit in favor of the trend, then against the trend, sweeping buy side liquidity, showing displacement, and then just continuing with what we could have believed was the direction, right? Which is pretty much what happened today. So random buy side liquidity, immediate 1-minute displacement, creating entry, which is one of the entries that I actually took on paper trading that you were able to see. Okay, let's now go for the trade screenshots. 5-minute fair value gap. This is always going to be the best entry. The fair value gap right after a run of buy side liquidity is always going to be the best opportunity that we're likely going to get through today. The earlier it happens, the better as well. Okay, so we'll go with this one. Five-minute fair value gap. Potential first loss. Potential loss. Tiny runs on buy side liquidity. Mitigation of 5-minute G from phase one. Well, it is still phase one. Displacement. pretty much. A lot of 1 minute involved in this. That's what I do want to mention that because it is important for me later. Itself. Okay. Also, do keep in mind, I think I have said this a couple of times, it's not that we are going to trade every fair value gap that we find, it's that it has to happen after a run and buy side or sell side liquidity, right? In favor of the trend as well, obviously. So this could have been entry number 1, and this could have been, or should have been, the first entry taken today, which I did take. It's on the videos you were able to see. Those will be the first 2 opportunities, and then we have this 15-minute fair value gap. Price trades into it. It kind of created equal highs there. That's fine though. There's the displacement, so this would have been the entry. This is phase 3 already. I'm gonna call it phase 3, although the fair value gap is from phase 2. So phase 2, let's actually just write it here. 15-minute phase 2 fair value gap. Trace into that market shift on here. Fair value gap, fair value gap. So this is a tiny run on tiny high, immediate displacement, tiny potential entry, all in 1 minute as well. If I wanted to explain this one, so we have phase 2, higher time frame FPG, 1 minute. Does it take liquidity? Yeah. Tiny run on DSL, 1 minute displacement, 1 minute execution. As usual. And that's pretty much it. Those were the trades. Multiples. So we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. Four potential opportunities that, of course, depending on target, would have been one way or the other. But that's really the resume to make today, right? I think the most. It's just that today's session was really clear. Today's session was really clear. Many things were just right there in front of our faces. I mean, this happening when it happened and the way that it happened is just clear as the day. Price just trades into that and it starts falling. Then another fair value gap from the 15, which let's actually check it out how it actually was. Pretty sure I wasn't too far away. Oh, we're on replay. Hold on. Yeah, there it is. Barely mitigated that. That's why I had to get out of replay. Replay tends to change the candles, sadly. But as you can see, it barely trades above that. But of course, it's good enough. Well, the highs changed due to the time frames. You're able to see it in the live market. After markets, not after the market, a few hours later, it just tends to fuck up its trading view. Or Forex.com, I think I'm using. How do I check that? Here. FXM. FXM is what I'm using. It's the one that works with my broker, so that's fine. So that's really all. That's the resume for me. Pretty clear day. I think you were able to see it on the video. I was a bit disappointed I wasn't able to take the first entry. I think was the clearest, or not the clearest, the most clear one. Maybe this one as well, which is the one that I tried to take on my funded, but well, just messed it up a bit. And after that, honestly, we had this, which was a little bit complicated due to first stop loss and then the news, right? We had news at 11, so you can see, well, we're 10 New York time. And it is what it is, right? Pretty clear day, which shows me how the concepts are working today, or work specifically together. But lovely day, honestly. So I'm gonna do the conclusion now. That's pretty much it from this video. I hope you enjoyed. Hope you took something away from it, and I'll be seeing you on to the next one.